Not because you're trying to hide, but because explaining yourself is now a liability. And power, real power, thrives in controlled expression, not emotional transparency. This isn't to say emotion has no place, quite the opposite. Emotion, when mastered, becomes vision, it becomes conviction. But when unleashed without restraint, it creates chaos. Imagine a storm with no structure, just noise, wind, destruction. That's what uncontained emotion looks like in power. It doesn't comfort, it confuses. And confusion is the first crack in your foundation. Becoming who you truly are often requires walking through silence alone. It requires letting go of the need to be constantly understood, even by those closest to you. Because when you are tasked with carrying vision, clarity must come before closeness. And sometimes the very people you long to connect with are not capable of holding the full depth of your truth without misinterpreting it. You begin to see relationships differently, not with suspicion, but with precision. You stop spilling everything to feel less alone. You learn that connection is sacred, not casual. That some emotions are meant to be transmuted internally, not shared publicly. And the fewer people who have access to your internal world, the more protected your purpose becomes. Not everyone should know what keeps you up at night. Not everyone should be invited into the furnace where your strength is forged. This doesn't make you cold, it makes you clear. There is a difference. Coldness is indifference. Clarity is responsibility. And when you operate from clarity, you begin to notice how often people equate closeness with entitlement. They want access but not accountability. They want presence but not pressure. And the moment you withhold something, your time, your thoughts, your feelings, they claim you've changed, that you've become distant, but in truth, you've just become aware. That awareness reshapes how you communicate. You speak less, but with more weight. You listen more, but absorb less. You offer guidance, but rarely seek validation because validation, when it becomes a need, becomes your leash. And the powerful cannot afford to be leashed. Not by praise, not by criticism, and especially not by emotional dependency. You will still feel deeply, you'll still wrestle with doubt, you'll still crave intimacy, but you'll start choosing solitude over superficial closeness. Not because you want to suffer alone, but because you understand that most people aren't asking to help carry your burden, they're asking to be entertained by it. That sounds harsh, but it's true. When you lead, people become curious. They want to peek behind the curtain. They want to know the story, the struggle, the raw truth. But very few are prepared to sit with that truth without distorting it to fit their own narrative. And so you stop offering it freely. You start protecting your peace like it's oxygen, because it is. Without peace, your decisions become reactive, your leadership becomes emotional, your focus dissolves. And in that blur, you become predictable. Predictability, when you are in a position of influence, is dangerous. It gives people a map to your mind, and those maps don't always end up in safe hands. You learn to be present without being porous, to show up without showing all, to speak with warmth but not with weakness. This is not performance, it's preservation. Preservation of purpose, preservation of clarity, preservation of the self you've worked so hard to understand and build. You begin to see that connection doesn't have to mean exposure. It can be built through presence, consistency, depth, not constant emotional display. You don't close yourself off entirely. You become selective, intentional. You choose to connect through purpose, not just through pain. You connect through shared values, not shared wounds. And in doing so, the connections you do build become stronger, not louder, stronger, because they're not built on dependency, they're built on respect. Seneca wrote, "It is not the man who has too little, but the man who craves more that is poor." And this applies not just to possessions, but to relationships. Craving constant closeness, constant reassurance, constant understanding. That's emotional poverty. Real strength is in the one who can sit in the unknown, in the misunderstood, and still remain steady. That steadiness doesn't mean you're unaffected. It means you're in control of how you express what you feel. The more influence you hold, the more important that control becomes. Because people don't just watch what you say, they study how you carry yourself. Every word is measured. Every reaction is interpreted. And in that spotlight, emotion isn't just a feeling, it's a signal. One you must learn to send with care or not at all. So yes, connection requires vulnerability, but power demands a form of detachment. Not detachment from humanity, but from the impulse to be emotionally accessible to everyone all the time. It's learning when to speak and when to hold back, when to share and when to remain silent, when to connect and when to protect. And as you walk this path, it gets quieter. The circle gets smaller, the conversations get deeper, and the responsibility gets heavier. But within that stillness, something profound happens. You stop reaching outward for safety, you start building it inward, and the more you do that, the less you need from the world around you. That's the paradox no one tells you. The more you detach from needing connection, the more intentional your connections become. The less you rely on being seen, the more you see clearly. And the less you give your emotions away freely, the more power they carry when you choose to speak. That's not coldness, that's maturity, that's clarity. That's the kind of power that doesn't shout. It simply stands still, focused, untouchable. There's this image we carry when we hear the word fortress stone walls, gates that never open, high towers and a moat between us and the world. But that's just architecture. The real fortress isn't made of stone or steel. It's made of intention, of boundaries no one sees, but everyone feels. It's not a place you retreat to. It's something you carry with you. A state of mind that can't be breached by gossip, by judgment, or by the shifting winds of someone else's opinion. The strongest fortress is one that doesn't isolate you from life. It roots you so deeply in your own self that nothing outside of you holds the power to knock you off balance. And here's the truth most people miss. It's not about shutting people out. It's about not letting anything in that doesn't align with your values, your peace, your focus. The fortress isn't there to keep the world away. It's there to keep you whole. In a world that pulls you in 100 different directions, where expectations, comparisons, and distractions shout for your attention, building this inner fortress is not a luxury. It's survival. If you don't stand guard over your mind, someone else will take control of it, and they won't do it with force. They'll do it with flattery, with guilt, with manipulation dressed as concern. That's how breaches happen. Not with an attack, but with an invitation. And once the wrong person steps into your inner world, it doesn't take long before confusion follows. You start questioning your instincts. You hesitate when you used to move with clarity. You seek permission where you once stood firm. That's the danger of a weak foundation. It doesn't break all at once. It crumbles slowly, quietly, until one day you look around and realize you're no longer living from your values, but reacting to someone else's noise. The fortress mindset changes that. You stop explaining yourself to people who are committed to misunderstanding you. You stop defending your peace to those who benefit from your chaos. And most importantly, you stop letting your mood be dictated by external validation or criticism. You become sovereign, grounded, still. That's the paradox of strength. It looks like silence from the outside, but on the inside, it's a roaring fire that says, I know who I am, and I don't need you to agree with it. This isn't coldness, it's clarity. And clarity, once cultivated, becomes a shield, a soft, immovable boundary that doesn't need to push or pull. It simply is. Some will call it distance. Others might say you've changed. Let them. Because the moment your stability becomes uncomfortable for others, you've just revealed who was invested in your confusion. Carl Jung once said, The foundation of all mental illness is the unwillingness to experience legitimate suffering. That's what happens when you build no fortress. You suffer every time someone disapproves, every time you feel misunderstood, every time someone doesn't see your worth. But when you build this fortress, you accept a new kind of suffering, the kind that comes from restraint, from choosing to stay quiet when you could lash out, from letting people misinterpret you rather than wasting your energy trying to be understood. And over time, that suffering transforms into strength. You learn to observe instead of react, to sit in discomfort without rushing to fix it, to recognize that most situations don't need your energy. They need your stillness. That's the power of a fortified mind. It doesn't resist the world, it outlasts it. Like a mountain that doesn't tremble at every storm, it doesn't mean you're unfilling. It means your emotions aren't running the show. It means you've built something steadier beneath the surface, something that no rumor, no betrayal, no fleeting praise can touch. This inner stillness becomes the way you navigate everything. Conflict doesn't feel like chaos, it becomes information. Criticism doesn't sting, it becomes insight or noise. And you learn to tell the difference. Praise doesn't, it simply passes through, and betrayal